Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Sunday evening, the 10th of February, 2019, and tonight's topic, central banks are buying gold. That is all you need to know. And that is a topic which appears to be a very hot one amongst the, dare I say it, gold pumping community. It is right up there with the silver pumping communities with their JP Morgan is buying silver. That is all I need to know. Well, at least with this central banks are buying gold narrative, there is truth to it, and we're going to go through it and determine how much gold is being bought, what percentage of the total demand that gold is, and why these central banks are buying gold. And maybe that will be all you need to know. First, let's take a look at the gold market right now, and it's flat. 13.13 is the price of gold. Excuse me, and the price of silver is $15.79. So not much movement in the gold and silver markets. Over in the cryptos, there appears to be some life stirring in the cryptocurrencies, especially Litecoin up again to 46.55, up 5% in the last 24 hours. Ethereum at 124, that's up 5%. Bcash down just a little bit to $125.90. And Bitcoin moving up to $3,650, up 0.5%. Now, let's take a look at some of the crypto stories before we get into a fairly deep dive into the central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. We're going to take a look and give you more than just the headline. The headline, in some respects, is deceptive. People putting a lot of attention into this central banks are buying gold. And some analysts are actually scratching their heads and wondering why the price isn't skyrocketing. It's very typical in the gold and silver communities to latch on to or cherry pick a particular piece of data and then scratch their heads almost in a rhetorical question and ask, why isn't gold and silver skyrocketing? What do these facts indicate that we understand that the rest of the world doesn't understand? And once the rest of the world understands this, gold and silver are set to skyrocket. Now, we're going to go through that, but first let's take a look at some of these crypto stories for today. Let's see. Now, the other night I had mentioned the concept of, what was it here? Let's see here. Oh, looks like they're all gone. Nope, there they are. I put them in the gold. It's all right. Okay, the other day we were talking about the Bitcoin ETF and whether that would get approved, and we were talking about the Van Eck Bitcoin ETF, and I had mentioned there was a leaked interview which is now out from an SEC commissioner named Jackson, and he was saying that it's basically a matter of time until the SEC approves the Bitcoin ETF. And I had mentioned there was another woman who had dissented the last time they had turned down the Bitcoin ETF. I think it was a 3-2 decision. And I said her name was Hester Prynne. And I said, no, that's the woman from the Scarlet Letter. And here her name is Hester Pierce. And she is in favor of the Bitcoin ETF. And she says, I look forward to working with you, Commissioner Jackson, to open the doors to innovation. And then she says, we are not merit regulators issuing seals of approval, so let's encourage investors to do their own work to decide whether investment is right for them. The point is well taken because you can lose money on lots of ETFs, What the SEC's job is not to approve. They don't approve a prospectus. In fact, it says right there on the cover, the SEC has neither approved or disapproved of the issuance of these securities, or language to that effect, and any statement to the contrary is a criminal offense. I believe it says something like that because they are not approving anything. They're approving a rules change that allows a Bitcoin ETF to be issued. And then all the documentation, all the risk factors are on they're the responsibility of the sponsor of the ETF. The SEC takes no responsibility. All they do is they approve the rules change. They approve, or not approve. Remember, the word is not approve. The word is review the risk factors. They try to ask a lot of meaningful questions to make sure there's no material facts that are misstated or any omissions. And then the company or the sponsor of the ETF takes ultimate responsibility for any mistakes or omissions that are in there. But it looks like the Bitcoin ETF is probably going to get approved if you already have now 2 SEC commissioners coming out publicly in favor of it. All right, what else do we got today? The Lightning Network is becoming a big deal for Bitcoin, and they're saying now that the Bitcoin Lightning Network now has over 6,000 nodes, even more channels, and I think it can handle about $2.5 million worth of Litecoin at any given point, Bitcoin at any given point. And they're saying now that it actually has passed Apple Pay, which is quite an achievement. Bitcoin Lightning Network payments already comparable with Apple Pay, researcher reveals. So the number of transactions on the Bitcoin network right now are pretty much equal to the peak of December 2017, January 2018, as is the hash rate. So you're seeing very comparable metrics. And keep in mind, a lot of people have gauged the health of Bitcoin, Litecoin, and cryptocurrencies solely based on the price. As I mentioned, this is a huge mistake. It was a mistake I made in 2011. The price goes down. That doesn't mean that work stops, innovation stops, investment in the space stops. A lot of people said, see, there, the price is down. I'm vindicated. It was a big waste of time. It was a Ponzi scheme. It's all over. Well, that's happened 3 times already, and this is the 4th time. And this time I've been watching it all year, and we've seen that the money pouring into stable coins, exchanges, the new backed entity backed by New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ coming out with surveillance services, Fidelity coming on board with a crypto trading platform in the next couple of months, Van Eck trying to push this Bitcoin ETF, and then also TM Ameritrade also coming out with a trading platform. Plenty of not just opportunity, but money moving into cryptocurrencies despite the drop in price. And that's generally what happens. The price falls down, but the research, the innovation, the money continues to pour into the space. And that's why I didn't write it off this time when it fell. And also the lowest low of 2018 was still higher than the highest low in the lowest low in 2017, and all the way back. So each year, the price, the lowest price in each given year is still higher than the year before, and we're seeing that again this year. The lowest price in 2018 was $3,200, and Bitcoin has not come to that level in 2019. We'll see how that goes, but I am seeing a lot of work in this Lightning Network expansion, and also the ATM expansion has more than doubled. Work has not stopped. Expansion of the network has not stopped just because the price has fallen off. And now we're starting to see a little movement in the price. Now, over on Litecoin, it's difficult to understand what's going on. I had suggested last night that maybe it was a lot of publicity from the Litecoin Foundation hobnobbing with a lot of these Hollywood-style directors, actors, actresses, producers, and so on. That's when the price surge, it did coincide with the beginning of this Mammoth Film Festival. I'm not sure that's the reason, but they also had featured and promoted Litecoin at the UFC. Now they're saying they're headed to Hollywood. I suppose name recognition, maybe some big buys, not sure. Now we're seeing a lot of activity in the 10 largest wallets, hundreds of thousands of Litecoin being transferred amongst the largest wallets. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know who those wallets are, but that's all available to see on the blockchain. Now, they're starting to get news on this here. They're talking about the Litecoin halving, which will happen later this year in about 6 months. And that's when the block reward gets cut in half from 25 to 12.5 coins. It's generally a bullish sign every time it comes up every 3 years, I believe. And there's also talk now that 50 is the next target on Litecoin. Again, all this stuff, Who knows why these things go up or down, but I will say that they really have nothing to do with what's going on in terms of investment, in terms of size of number of transactions, hash rate, and so on. And that the price is basically on charts and sentiment, and it really doesn't indicate the health of the network. I think it's a big mistake, as I repeat it, that people make, is they think the price goes down and that means that these coins are finished. No, it just means that the people who bought them and had no idea why they bought them, they bought them because they were going up. And when the price went down, they had no idea why they bought it. So why hold something when it's going down? So they sell it. But again, there's not a correlation between what's going on with these coins and the price. And if the price goes up again, remember, I would look at it this way, that these coins, Bitcoin and Litecoin in particular, are further advanced today than they ever were. Now, their price isn't, but that's got nothing to do with it. They have more users, they have more nodes, they have more hash rate, more transactions, greater acceptance, and the price is lower. But those things aren't correlated and probably won't be correlated for quite some time because these things are going to trade on sentiment. All right, what else do we got here before we move on to the gold? The Litecoin Summit's been announced. That's no big deal, but that's going to, well, it might be, who knows, but that's coming up in October. That's the second Litecoin Summit. That'll be sponsored by the Litecoin Foundation. In gold, we mentioned the other night that there is record amount of Bitcoin and Litecoin activity in Venezuela on these peer-to-peer exchanges. I think it was local Bitcoins. Also, Venezuelans are doing some primitive mining to get themselves some gold to make ends meet. We saw this in Brazil as well. If you have an area where there's poverty, but yet somehow there may be an old exposed gold or silver vein, or somewhere they can somehow manage to scrape together a little gold, and that's happening in Venezuela. All right, now let us move over to central banks are buying gold. That is all you need to know. All right. The headline that everyone's talking about is central banks are buying gold. It is the most amount of gold that has been bought by central banks since 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. Yeah, that's all true. But the amount of gold that was bought is just slightly higher than the amount of gold that was bought in 2013. According to the World Gold Council, 650 tons of gold were bought by central banks. In 2013, 623. My numbers are a little lower, but that doesn't matter. They're directionally close enough. I've got Russia at 271 tons. They have them at 274 tons. I generally get the numbers directly from the central bank sites if I can. So the chart you're looking at now has what I've pulled from Kazakhstan Central Bank website, from Reserve Bank of India, from Russia. I've heard on stories in the news like Hungary with its 28.4 tons of gold added. And then some of this other stuff here is based directionally on the World Gold Council numbers. Okay, so the amount of gold that was bought this year, according to World Gold Council, is about 651 tons, and that is the most since 1971, just ahead of the 2013 number. And in 2014, it was 583 tons, 2015, 576, and 2012, 569. So the last 5 years are notable, 6 years, in that central banks have been buying gold to the tune of 500 to 600 tons a year. However, it's a bit misleading, as up until this year, the bulk of the central bank buying was really 3 countries, and it's still 3 countries. Russia, Kazakhstan, and China a few years back, not so much this year. Actually, that should be a 10 there. I didn't put it back in. Okay. This year, you had some notable new additions to central banks buying gold. That was India. Now, India hadn't purchased gold in 9 years, and they added 40 tons this year. Turkey, depending on how you calculate it, they either bought none or 52 tons. They have a weird way of accounting for their gold. It's either through the central banks or other state-owned banks. But the World Gold Council gives them 50 tons this year, so I'll add that in there. The other notable thing is that Russia, let's take a look. Russia had 271 tons. That is the bulk of central bank gold buying. They are the ones who are really buying gold. And Russia is, that was a record year for Russia. So makes sense if Russia's buying gold at a record pace and they're the bulk of central bank gold buying, then that's why this was a record year. Here is a chart that shows Russian central bank gold buying, and it pretty much tracks those big years that we just were talking about the last few years, with this year being the biggest year, last year, I mean, at 271 tons. Kazakhstan also the second largest buyer of gold, and clearly not the second largest country by any means in terms of economics, but you could see they've been adding a big amount, and this year was their largest amount that they bought. 50 tons this year, 40 tons, 50 tons in 2018, 40 tons in 2017, and I think 35 in 2016. So you can see they're buying a lot of gold. But let's get back to the chart. If central banks are buying that, they are buying gold, and that is all I need to know. Well, let's just go through each of the countries, and then we're going to put all this into the context of total gold demand and supply. I have asterisks next to the countries that are major gold, that have major gold mining production in their countries, and Australia is one of them. But Australia shed 4 tons of gold in 2018. Azerbaijan, which is a very small country, but it has significant gold mining, and it added 14 tons for the first time this year. China added 10 tons this year at the very end, last year at the very end in 2018. People's Bank of China had been adding gold at a decent clip from June 2015 to October 2016, and then they sold off a lot, not of gold, but they sold off a lot of their foreign reserves, down from 4 trillion down to 3 trillion. Now remember, this isn't China's gold. This is a very important point. People get hung up